Hello, everyone. This is Matt, and once again, I would like to welcome you to Cut and Splice. I'm joined, as usual, with Jason and Gil. This time around, we are going to be discussing Stanley Kubrick's masterpiece from 1968, 2001, A Space Odyssey. We'll try to compare it to Steven Soderbergh's 2002 film Solaris. I didn't get any response from that. I'm joking. Obviously, we're talking about.
Well,
I'm
hopefully Jason
obviously
saw the right
talking
one.
about.
Oh, that would be funny,
Yeah,
wouldn't it?
I'm correct. I'm obviously talking about Andrei Tarkovsky's 1972 film Solaris, which is also a masterpiece produced by my favorite country in human history, the Soviet Union. So I'll let Gil jump in at this point because it was his idea. But I threw a joke out there and it didn't land. So
Oh, it's okay. I was also muted there for a second because of the connection issues. But yeah. So I think for one thing, I think 2001 came up a lot early on doing this podcast, and I thought at some point we should do an episode about it. But then Matt brought up Stalker, which we'll probably do an episode on soon. But I thought that, and then I thought, oh, this is a great idea to like bring 2001 in, but compare it to like a Tarkovsky movie. And I just felt like Solaris was a better comparison than Stalker. And then maybe when we do the Stalker thing, it's a standalone, so we can get more in depth about it. Because I don't know, I personally feel like 2001. I mean, it'd be nice to talk about it a bit, but to me, it needs no introduction to some degree. It's my favorite movie of all time, and it's probably the most important movie ever made about the human species. But yeah, and then Solaris is did not disappoint to be disappointing a second time because I was never crazy about it like the first time I watched it, but and then I watched it again, and it's it's a tough watch, and I don't dislike all of Tarkovsky's movies, but I definitely have issues to some degree with his style. And I think it's very apparent in Solaris. I mean, I know that he's seen that movie as a bit of a failure as well, but not because of apparently Kubrick really liked Solaris when he saw it. And I'm not saying there's no merit to it. There's moments to it, and there's like wisdom to it. But you compare these two movies, and it's actually a fascinating comparison. It's almost like comparing a student film to like a Spielberg movie. That's the way it feels to me. Like maybe a very good student film, but it just feels like day and night. And then this was and 2001 was made 4 years earlier. So it just shows, and I understand it's a resources issue for sure, but it just shows how incredible like what Kubrick achieved was at the time, and it's surprising that he didn't like George Lucas. Like he should have just like started an effects company and become like a billionaire, because that's what Lucas did when he made Star Wars. He developed all these special effects, and then he said like, oh, let's just do it for other movies as well. Because that's what I felt like watching a Space Odyssey. I was like, wow, like did they really like the special effects in this? Because it's like the 10th time I've seen this movie, so I was able to focus on certain details that I maybe not in the past, and it's just amazing like what they were able to do, and the fact that they were able to put it together in a way that's cohesive and was still a story, but had this just bravado of like imagery and ingenuity. I just think it's a spectacular movie on every level. But yeah, but what about you, Jason? How was your was this the first time you've seen Solaris?
No. We I have seen prior to this viewing, I had seen 2001 one time when I went to go see it with you guys in theaters. After it was a two-parter with Sunshine and 2001. I could be wrong, but I believe that was my first experience to both of those two movies. Was that two-parter? I'm pretty sure. Anyway,
I remember going to the theater with you to see that. That was a pretty cool night.
it was
I
a
also
pretty cool night.
remember snoring like a motherfucker like during the second movie.
You remember what?
But I remember somebody snoring.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring
Somebody,
that
like,
up
fell
too.
asleep
That
right-
like about
Yeah.
not even halfway through the second not even halfway through 2001, there was like somebody just completely asleep, maybe like 5 or 6 seats over from us. Yeah, I was going to bring that up too. Anyway, that was the first time and only time I had seen 2001, and then I really do not remember when, but I know that we saw Solaris in theaters together. Um, I know I know this because while I had seen the Soderbergh one first and didn't really love it, people had told me that it was kind of sort of a remake of a Russian film. You guys had told me all about this movie, and despite wanting to see it, I can almost guarantee that I would not have paid money to go to a movie theater to see a movie like this had I not, had you guys to like say, let's go do this. This is going to be a good movie. Trust us, kind of thing. I probably would have just spent my money on something else. So like, yeah, I don't remember when it was. I don't know where we went to see it. I mean, obviously, probably one of the American Cinematheque theaters or something like that. I don't know, but I do know that I've only seen Solaris one time, and it was also in a theater. But it was a long time ago. I think when we saw Solaris, it had to be so many years ago, probably in school still. So prior to 2008, at least. And I definitely know for sure that I had seen the movie. I know I remembered many parts of the movie, but virtually everything that I remembered was on the space station. I didn't remember anything from the beginning on when they're still on Earth or anything else. I definitely mostly remembered his interactions with his wife and stuff like that. But I'll go into more of that later. But yeah, both of these were my second time seeing it, and also my first. Both of them were long detached from the first time seeing it.
Oh, so 2001 is only the second time you've seen it?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
I guess I might as well just tell you that in regard to Tarkovsky, when we get to our like ratings before we give spoilers, spoiler alert. I mean, everything by Tarkovsky from me is going to be like a 9.5 to a 10. I
Wow.
think like I might be a bigger Tarkovsky fan than I am a Spielberg fan, and I am a big freaking Spielberg fan. So I'll just put that out there right away. That said, I mean, I've seen 2001 a lot. I've seen 2001. I think I saw 2001 the first time when I was in like high school or something, and then I mean the last time that I saw it in theaters was when Christopher Nolan did like a new 70 millimeter release of it, and I went and saw that in theaters, and that was like spectacular. I do agree with Gil on the point of 2001 being at least one of the most important movies ever made, one of the best movies ever made. It usually makes my top 5. But I mean, as usual, Kubrick is right and Gil is wrong in that, that Solaris is a spectacular movie. It is a great film, and but one thing that I will say for both of these films is that, like, I wouldn't recommend them to anybody who is under the age of 25. Because, like, the first time I saw 2001: A Space Odyssey, I didn't like it. I just thought it was meandering, boring, like, when are we going to get to the action? And the action pretty much doesn't really happen. I mean, even when the action happens, it's pretty meandering. Kind of the same thing with Solaris. It's just like, if you're not a mature person, you're going to have a problem processing these films. And that might be the most pretentious thing that I've ever said on this podcast, but I kind of stand
sometimes
by
even
it.
if you're mature, you might not connect with them for one reason or another, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I can definitely say is that the first time that I watched Solaris, I was definitely at Columbia College, not university. I'm not a Jew-hating piece of shit like most of the students at Columbia University.
I have to go there.
Weird tangent, but okay.
I'm just a piece of shit in general. Uh, uh, I actually ordered Solaris on Netflix back when they were sending DVDs out. So, like, yeah, that's how old we are. I got the DVD. I was watching it in my studio apartment in LA, and it was just after I had a cinematography class, and we were talking about lens breathing.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
And I mean, it was one of those things where, like, I understood it conceptually, but I had never seen it. And then the first sequence of Solaris comes up, and they pull focus, and they were using, like, these square front Lomo anamorphic lenses on Solaris, and that was like the first time that I saw lens breathing, and it, like, just hit me in the face. Like, holy crap, that's a lens that breathes like Pavarotti. I mean, it was like it just like went.
Yeah, there's quite a bit in this movie.
I mean, aside from that, I thought the movie looked gorgeous. I had kind of forgotten how beautiful the movie looked, just in general. I mean, Tarkovsky was one of the few Soviet filmmakers that actually could get his hands on Kodak film.
So what would be your rating for them?
Well, I mean, 2001, easily 10 out of 10. Solaris, 9.5 out of 10.
Okay, it's like a 9.5 and a 10. Yeah, I mean, my ratings for them from back when, I haven't touched them on IMDb, are 10 and a 6. And I actually thought I gave Solaris a 7, but it does look like a 6, and I'm very proud of my my younger self for not giving it a 7, because that would have been like just going along with the rest of the people. But I think this is an interesting discussion, and maybe we can not get stuck on it too much this time, and we can expand on it maybe when we do Stalker, because apparently that's his sci-fi masterpiece that he claims and everybody claims is his best science fiction movie that he's made, and one of his better movies. Yeah. So we'll see. Maybe we'll talk about it more then. But it is fascinating, the Tarkovsky phenomenon. But we'll get into that. Yeah. But what about you, Jason? The ratings.
It's very difficult to rate these movies I think for Solaris, I'd probably go with like 7, and with 2001, I'd probably say, I don't know. That's the hardest one because um, I have nothing but respect for Kubrick. I love his movies. I don't think I've disliked any of his movies that I've seen. Um, and I liked this movie much more the second time than I did the first. Um, and I think while I always appreciated it, I think this time through, there's no question that like this movie needs to be talked about all the time in terms of like some of the best use of like set design and everything, everything visually that they're doing with the models and the sets and everything like that is like really really good and ahead of its time. Just kind of ingenious stuff, but at the same time, um it's not a perfect movie. It's I do think it's overrated, and it's very very important. It's an important movie, but I don't think I could really go above like an 8 just because of the problems I have with it. But yeah, that's more or less where I'd put it.
8 and 7. So they're
Yeah.
pretty close for you.
Well, I mean, the problem is that my problems with the movies are opposite, and we can discuss that more later. But it's like I want to be forgiving to Solaris because I like the ideas behind it, but but let me just say this very clearly about both of these movies. I am extremely open-minded to someone changing my mind about this. Okay. But second impressions on these movies are basically that I like a lot of what Solaris is doing and what it's saying, what it's succeeding at saying. I don't like the way it's doing it, and I don't like the way it looks. There are things that I like in it, but I don't like overall how it looks. Um, it's almost the opposite with 2001. I'm extremely fascinated by 2001. I think it asks a bunch of really interesting questions, and I think its use of visuals and music and all sorts of other things that we can go into in much more detail later on are like perfect almost. I just think that at the end of the day, it's not really giving us much in terms of answering those questions. So anyway, that's my overall thing. I really guess that if I think about let me be clear about this. As we're recording this, like 3 minutes before I turned my computer on and got on this thing with these guys, I just finished Solaris. So I'm in my head, I'm still processing it a little bit for the second time. When I think about the negative things, it makes me want to put like a 6. But when I think about the positive things, I definitely want it to be like an 8. So that's kind of why I said 7. I mean, it's not that I see them as like super close to each other. It's just that's just where my brain is at right now.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. We should definitely get into it. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of what else as far as recommending it. I mean, I think I've brought this up before, maybe not on a recording of a podcast, but but to me, Solaris basically feels like a very, very elongated, extended Star Trek episode or Twilight Zone episode. Whereas, like 2001 is basically, it's complete fiction, obviously, because it's not what's. I mean, it is possible that we might find a monolith in the future, in 100 years, 200 years. Like nobody says that it's impossible. That but the aspiration of what the movie is, of like a universe where this actually happened, and humanity can essentially like reconnect with its maker in some sort of like ethereal, like completely nonverbal, fantastical way, is just so much a bigger idea than anything that is in Solaris. But I don't know. I mean, like I want to be convinced. Maybe I shouldn't have even said anything and just like got into it. I don't even know if it's a spoiler, like for 2001. But I mean, maybe I should delete this. But
no, I don't think you should. The movie was made in the 70s,
68.
So,
yeah, so
68.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
I'm not sure that you can spoil 2001.
2001. No, yeah, because there's so much going on there. It's ridiculous, and we'll get into it. But basically, I'm just saying, and again, and maybe I've seen Solaris twice now, and I still don't get it, and I still missed what's going on there, and I would like to be enlightened. But we'll get into this. Like, but the main issue that I have with Tarkovsky, and it's funny because like, people like to say that often Bergman is quoted as saying that Tarkovsky was the greatest filmmaker that ever lived, and people like Roger Deakins also think that, which makes sense, him and Matt, because they're cinematographers and they're all about the image, and Tarkovsky is all about the image. But as a storyteller, I really have a serious problem with him. So I just think that I think Bergman was incorrect. He should have looked in the mirror, because he truly is one of the he's what Tarkovsky should have been if he had just try to actually like deal with subjects like just with a bit more straightforwardness, and not be basically attempting against all odds to like bore people to tears. Because I know some really slow filmmakers. Like 2001's a slow movie. Bergman makes very slow movies. I was just gonna say,
Gil, like what the hell?
I mean, Kieslowski is like a very slow filmmaker. I mean, he has like a thing with the sugar cube that like is for like 7 seconds. Like he puts in the coffee and it like turns brown. But I mean, Tarkovsky is really, really testing the limits, and it almost seems like he's fucking with the audience. And I get it. It's not that. It's just that maybe he, kind of like a Terrence Malick thing. Maybe he thinks that by slowing things down to a crawl, we can get to the essence of things. We can ponder them. It's almost a meditative state that the movie is hold on. Sitting in.
Gil, we gotta go into the deep dive now, because I mean, honestly,
yeah. So let's go into spoilers.
I do not understand how you could possibly say that about Solaris and not feel exactly the same way about 2001. But that's what I want you to unpack. But before we
go, and we'll get into that, because Kubrick is not always like that.
Of course not. Of course not. I'm just saying, you said like favorite movie of all time, and I'm like, all these criticisms, 100% there for 2001 also. Anyway,
and I will explain why it works there, but I'll explain.
Okay, all right. And that's what I'm looking forward to. But I just wanted to say real quickly that because we always talk about recommendations and such, that while I enjoy these movies, I think it's like, I like what Matt said about no one watching them before they're 25. But I would also just say that these movies are aggravatingly slow, and both of them.
I like that.
And I'm glad you like that. If let me put it this way, I already liked these movies the first time I saw them, but I had problems with both of them. But this time, when you said it, I was like, let me rephrase that. Several weeks ago, when we decided that this is what we were going to do, I was excited to revisit these movies and to have a reason to revisit them. But I also had this feeling in my gut of like, oh God, I'm going to have to watch these two movies again. because I'm telling you right now, even with a positive mindset of these movies, it took me 3 sittings to get through 2001 and 2 sittings to get through Solaris. And like, I'm just telling you, these movies are good, but you have to be in the right mood for these types of movies. These are not going to be the kind of thing where you're like, on a weekday, you're just like, I'm going to make some food, I'm going to sit down and enjoy a movie and put on Solaris.
No, they're like work. They're like the Marshall McLuhan. They're like cold media.
I need to point this out. They're painstakingly slow, and they still pack a lot of story in, and both of them are shorter than Avengers Endgame.
Oh, how dare you! If you're going to make that point, you can make that about a lot.
But Avengers Endgame has a lot of characters.
Yes. Avengers Endgame has a lot of story in it too.
Yeah,
there's a lot of better examples you could make of dumb movies that are longer than these.
Fluff.
How dare you?
There's a lot of fluff, a lot of wannabe comedy.
So many other things that would be better.
But in any case, but yeah, I guess are we ready? But yeah, I think it's a very good point. Yes, like these are the type of movies, and it's funny that Matt said 25 because that's also the recommendation for marijuana usage because that's when your brain fully develops, so it can no longer be messed up. Because basically, if you have marijuana on an ongoing basis, like a badly like daily user, it could actually change the structure of your brain permanently. Whereas after 25, especially if you do it moderately, it's not supposed to have an effect on it. But that's because of the development of the brain that happens like 18 to 25. In any case,
I thought you were going somewhere else with that, but okay, yeah.
No, but in any case, and
I thought you were going to say that after 25, because of that recommendation, that like now they can get high when they watch the space sequences.
Oh yeah, 2001, and I will say this, yeah, I've and I know people don't want to talk about like getting high and things like that because of all the stigma, but 2001 was very famous for like college students like making it a cult classic because they kept going back while being high. I've tried. I think that screening, the 2001 that we went to, I think I drank alcohol for it because this was
I think
before.
You did too.
Yeah, and I fell asleep because it was late too.
We had just finished Sunshine. I mean, it was a long night.
Yeah, and it was like before marijuana legalization and all that. And then more recently, I think it was like a year or two ago, I watched 2001 High, and the beginning of the movie is spectacular. Just the music and the docking and the stuff. It's so slow when you're high, but spectacularly so. But I mean, the second half of the movie, generally like movies, like for me personally, it doesn't work as well like being high because movies are ultimately need to have story logic, and there's a lot of logicalness to it. That's why the only time it really works or enhances it more strongly is if there's a lot of music involved, which is the first half of the movie, or if it's a musical or listening to music. But generally, movies just are not always very enhanced by that. So I'm surprised that it was very popular in the late 60s with college students. But
I have friends that would disagree with you on that, but I do hear what you're saying.
Yeah, because for me, and maybe it's just me because I'm an aspiring filmmaker and all that. For me, when I watch a movie, it's a very, very logical experience. It's actually not very emotional. I will get emotional if a scene is very emotional, but for the most part, I'm figuring out the puzzle pieces. It's a very logic-based thing, and when you're high, it doesn't enhance logic. It enhances emotionality, which is what music is, which is what. Yeah, certain like visual things, maybe slow motion can be enhanced because I saw 300 and that was like very powerful because there's so much slow motion in it, so it was even slower. but yeah, if there's too much talking and too much logic of the story to it just doesn't work. So the second half of the movie kind of falls apart, and I can't even imagine watching Solaris High. That would be just an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
But which the
Also,
biggest thing I would say, like before we get into spoilers, and I'll let you talk, Matt, is it's just that the fact that just Tarkovsky is the visual filmmaker, but they can't stop talking. The whole movie they're talking. Meanwhile, 2001 is almost a nonverbal movie. So it's very ironic that they flipped positions in this movie with these movies. But you know,
It is ironic.
that is a good point. I was just going to say, but like Sunshine is the superior film in every way, right? So like
Sunshine, yeah, yeah, it's trying to piss me off.
yeah, exactly.
It definitely is.
And maybe we should have done Sunshine 2001 instead of Solaris.
Nah, we already kind of did that when we watched it.
No. We need to do Sunshine and Event Horizon. That's they're basically the same movie in the last portion of it.
Only in a little
in any
small
case,
portion.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
okay, so spoilers. I guess we
Yeah.
kind of got
Yeah.
into it. Yes, I don't know. I mean, I would like, if you have any thoughts, you can go first. But it would be nice. I don't know if Jason want to start first or Matt, but like I would like to know what you took from Solaris, because it was a bit of a fever dream to watch it. But like, what was the greater point that he was trying to make there? The story was about, or like, I understand there's this entity that like communicates with them through these hallucinations, but what was the bigger point about it?
Well, Matt can obviously jump in as well and say what he probably has taken from his multiple viewings of this movie. But I think there was just a lot of interesting ideas about, like, it's funny, as I was watching it this time, I was thinking about the concept of us going to a planet, and then after arriving there, realizing that the planet itself, or some sort of entity on the planet that is not like a normal sized thing, like they talk about it possibly being the ocean or being the entire planet. They don't really know, but that some sort of sentient thing is reaching out to us and communicating. It made me think of that short film Nemesis, or not film, the book, which I always found pretty interesting. But of course, in that short, I feel like more is concluded than there is in Solaris. I also found the stuff that they're saying at the end about life and humanity and everything to be pretty interesting. But where I kind of dock at points, in a sense, is that, like Gil said, I feel like the most important stuff is in the last few conversations that characters are having towards the last, let's just call it 15 minutes or so of the movie. And most of it's all being talked about. Now, granted, there's a foundation of what we saw in the last hour before that, but it doesn't change the fact that when it comes to the points of what they're trying to really say with the movie, it's mostly being talked about.
Yeah, which is okay. I'm not completely opposed to it, because we always say how like it's good to throw a line here or there, but yeah, they're basically just it's almost like a podcast. It's just all these dialogue between these people, and there's not too much visual stuff. But yeah, also the main issue that I have with Solaris, it's just not believable. Maybe that's why I said student project, but I don't believe it doesn't make any sense that a psychologist would be traveling alone, to this space station. He would have had like a crew of astronauts with him. I don't know, maybe that technology is that much better in the future that they can send them like solo to a distant planet. And then the space station itself, like, what's up? I guess the gravity is not an issue because they're docked on the planet.
They seem to be pretty low on the planet itself. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe there's some gravity. So that part is maybe resolved, but the space station is not that believable to me. It doesn't seem very, like it looks like it's like an abandoned building almost. It doesn't look like a space station, the interior, except for like the Star Trek looking hallway that they kind of build. That thing is believable, but some of the outer rooms with the windows, I don't know, it's just not very believable. And then they have this library that looks like a room from someone's house, which I could buy that if they're trying to make it homey for the astronauts, but it's such a departure from the rest of the ship, and it's not explained in any way. And oh yeah, and they said they're going to lose gravity, and they did lose gravity there at some point. There's that moment where they lose gravity, and
Doesn't
that
really seem to have much of an effect on the story, though.
Yeah, exactly. And also it was done so poorly compared to what they did in 2001. Like because not everything is, like, for some reason some stuff is not floating and some stuff is floating, and it just felt like all the lessons that I've learned making movies is like, don't make a movie unless you have the right resources, you know. And maybe that's why Soderbergh felt like he should do a remake, because maybe all these things he can correct while trying to honor and I haven't seen it, but yeah, it just feels like such a half-baked like type of thing where they just shouldn't have even gone there. But I get it. It's still it's a story they wanted to tell it, even not under the best of circumstances, but it still was, if you suspend your belief to go along with it, to go on a ride, that's fine. And I do think it's an interesting idea, concept, but it's basically not that much better than a decent, not even a solid, not even a top 10 Star Trek or Twilight Zone episode. That's the way I see it. But again, maybe Matt can step in and tell me more to convince me.
I mean, the funny thing is, upon rewatch for me, I was just kind of thinking about how many science fiction stories, like, flat out stole from Solaris. I mean, like, the ending of Solaris well, okay, and by the way, I'm not saying that Christopher Nolan stole from Solaris. I'm saying that he should have stolen from Solaris. I mean, it's basically like an Inception ending. But,
it is kind of.
But the ending of Solaris tells you that he's still on the planet. He's still not on Earth. He's embracing his father, and he's basically embracing the illusion. Like, that's what the ending of Inception should have been.
It's the whole allegory of the cave thing, though. It's the first Star Trek episode.
Right.
I do agree with that part about the ending.
Yeah, but it was much clearer than Inception. Like,
right. Yeah.
They zoom out. I mean,
yeah, like Ad Astra, which is a movie that I'm definitely a huge fan of, definitely stole from this movie.
I think it stole from both.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I think that one of the biggest contrasts between Solaris and 2001 is that 2001 really endeavored to be the definition of hard science fiction in space, in cinema. Like, you know, they really endeavored to just get the physics right. They endeavored to get everything right, scientifically right. Solaris kind of went through this process of, it kind of went through the same 2001 process, like filmmaking process. And, you know, I mean, they didn't really spend that much time on just making everything realistic scientifically, but just dealing with, you know, the human element, which, by the way, is kind of weird in Soviet cinema.
That's something I was gonna say too, is that 2001 is more of a Soviet movie than Solaris. Go figure. Because
So,
the protagonist in 2001 is humanity. There is no protagonist.
Hey,
Um,
I'm not going to fight you on that.
I have a lot of positive and negative things to say about both of these movies, but since we're talking about Solaris and since Gil kind of started by opening that door already, I'll just say that like it frustrates me that this movie that they like I don't necessarily feel the same way Gil does about the space station. They show it from the outside. I think they put a lot of thought into going, look at from the outside what it looks like, and then once you're on the inside there's this circular hallway which very clearly is represented on the outside, and then each throughout that hallway you go into each corridor that's around it, like in a donut around it. I mean, it's thought out in certain ways.
No,
But
I don't deny that.
I would,
I even gave him
I'm
an excuse for the library too. But
I'm getting to that. I I think there are things about this movie that were thought out. I think there were things about this movie like when he arrives, the pants that he's wearing are definitely a costume that someone put together and put a little bit of thought into. Also, when he I definitely need to talk about this later, but when he launches the rocket in that scene, he and the wife are both wearing an outfit that that it was definitely had some thought put into it and stuff like that. I think the corridor had some thought put into it. I definitely see the stuff that Gil's talking about though, where certain rooms just look thrown together. But more or less, there are elements of this movie that I think they put a lot of work into. And it really frustrates me that this is a movie, they do not say when it's supposed to take place, but they do make it very clear that we are far enough in the future that we have interstellar travel and that we have landed on a rather decent sized space station on a or ship station, whatever, something on a mostly water covered planet, and that we are running all sorts of tests and things to see what we can do there, and that it's been that way for like what they say 18 years or something, like, because there's that video of that first guy who was there in the opening scenes. So I mean, for probably 20 something years at least, we've had interstellar travel, if not more. And they make zero effort to depict anything on Earth as anything but 1960s.
Yeah. Not to
Like,
mention that the
or
roads
70s, I
and
mean.
stuff, like
Yeah.
they shot it in Japan, and you see some Japanese, and it's supposed to be Russia, I think. But
I didn't even notice that.
yeah.
I just looked at the cars, looked at the streets, and was just like, what are we doing?
It's like an
Like,
alternative universe. Yeah,
it's
basically.
just bizarre. There's just no effort whatsoever to even show any sort of advanced technology or any sort of, I mean, I think it's obligatory and it's not here. I think if
Well,
you're
he
gonna
shot
make a
in
movie
Japan
like this,
because I think he thought it looked more modern than Russia in the 60s.
it probably did, and others have done that. The movie Her shot a bunch of scenes that are supposed to be, I think, LA, and they shot them in Japan so that there would be these like really nice like glass walkways and things that look like something we might get to at some point and stuff like that. But I mean, I get it. Maybe if we
But
were
the
watching
cars,
this
cars
the
are like,
year after it came out or something, maybe we would look at those scenes, especially if we were Russian and we lived in Russian cities. Maybe we would look at those scenes and go, ooh, that's interesting, or ooh, whatever. But we're not talking about like a moon base. We're not even talking about Mars. We're talking about interstellar travel that, as Gil pointed out, is like such a common thing for them that they're just putting this guy in a ship and just like, boom, you're there, kind of thing. Like, it's crazy to think that we would still be using internal combustion cars and driving around in traffic, like in pretty much modern day normal streets and cities. Like, there's just no effort, I feel, to do much of anything.
I mean, I
Also,
kind of,
not to mention that it was not completely necessary too, except for like the whole his match cut that's competing with the 2001 match cut where he cuts from the road to the so, quiet nature scene. Like that was the whole point of it, but he sets it up. It takes him like 17 minutes of road driving to get there. Like he didn't need that much to get that effect, but yeah, I don't know.
I will push back on the claim that there was no effort. I mean, there were definitely cars on the road in that sequence, and like I will concede that that sequence doesn't really sell me on, this is Russia in like 2500 or something. Like I get that, but
2005, 2002.
right, but most Star Trek, most original Star Trek doesn't sell me on, like, okay, this is, Earth in 2300 or something. But
yeah, but think about how smart they are with it. Like you get like they show in some Star Trek episodes they show San Francisco. Not, and I'm not talking about Star Trek 4. I'm talking about there's bits where they show the
they kind of choose buildings that are futuristic and stuff to shoot.
Well, but more importantly, like they don't show traffic on the freeway,
Yeah. No, I think it's an interesting.
They avoid showing certain things.
Maybe it's a thing.
But when you watch that sequence in Solaris, they did actually put some like futuristic gadgetry on the cars and everything. I mean,
I didn't even notice.
Yeah, I mean, they're.
And they also chose specific roads
at least
that
by
look
1972 Soviet standards. Yeah, they did.
Yeah,
okay, I will take your word
something.
for it.
Wasn't there like a video screen or something in the car or something?
Yeah, I don't know about in the car.
Do some stuff.
So, like, here's a good example.
So I'm just refuting that they made no effort.
Let me rephrase that.
It was just not convincing.
You are correct, Matt. You are correct. I don't. It was wrong of me to say that they made no effort. The end result shows me something where I don't see the effort.
Yeah, it's not convincing enough. But I think it's an interesting point that maybe, much like you watch like Soy Cuba and certain movies, and it's like they're even American movies like from the 60s and 70s, like the camera shakes a lot and it's like almost stupidly so, and you just accept it. So like I think maybe it was a thing like with European movies that are trying to do sci-fi. There's like, listen, we either tell these stories slightly unconvincingly and you have to suspend your disbelief, or we don't do them altogether, because the only way to do them is with a ton of Hollywood money, and that's not how we want to do it. So, it's, I guess we've gone a long way to nowadays having, Godzilla, the Godzilla movie that came out.
Yeah, but for like less than $10 million.
Yeah. I mean, that is, and by the way, anybody listening, if we have any listeners, holy fuck, that was a great movie.
Was really good. But just since we're comparing these movies and since we're talking about this aspect, obviously we can go into a lot more of this later, but just to compare, I mean, like you said, look at the exact same thing in both of these movies and how well it was done in one and how poorly in the other. In both of these movies, we, at the time when they were made, all we had were like television screens. We didn't have like, we didn't have FaceTime. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have tablets. We didn't have, the closest thing we had to screens were like big giant monitors and big giant TV sets and stuff. But look what they did. Like in Solaris, we have one scene at this farmhouse. And I mean, it's cool if you're going to say that in the future people still want to live out in the middle of nowhere on a farmhouse that's kind of fairly low tech, because personally I would like to do that, so that's fine. I find that believable and whatever. but like there's a moment where they're watching TV, and then after the guy gets mad and leaves or something, he calls to like give one last message to what's the guy's name again? Kurt or whatever the lead guy, I can't remember.
The psychiatrist.
Yeah, the psychiatrist, the main character.
Yeah, Chris.
Chris, thank you, Chris. I don't know what. I guess because of the K. I don't know. He's like, hey, one last thing, Chris. I know we got off the wrong foot, but this is something you need to know. I don't want you to think too much about it, but this is what you need to know. So he's calling like on a FaceTime call from the car. That's what is being depicted in this scene. What we see on the screen is Chris and his father going, oh, there's a call, and they push a button, and it's them staring past the camera at something unseen, and then the reverse that should be an over the shoulder at some sort of computer screen, or at the bare minimum their television set or something, instead is a tight shot of something that's tinted to be clearly a monitor, where it's just footage of the other guy the way they filmed it. And we're just supposed to put that together and go, I guess they're looking at a screen, because they didn't put any time or effort into showing us what sort of futuristic telecommunication system they have, and then compare that exact same thing, because back then they didn't have the technology either. Look at 2001. There's a shot of two astronauts on a futuristic spaceship sitting and having and enjoying breakfast and watching the news on tablets 35, 40 years before they were ever invented, because they stuck televisions underneath the table. That's smart.
Or they just or superimposed it. Like,
I don't really know. It kind of looks like they're just TVs under the table.
I mean, they had TVs on the wall on the set, but the iPad might have been like a superimposition. But in any case,
I'm not really sure how they did it. It looked like they might have done it with like it looked like from the camera angle that they were hiding the fact that there's something under the table. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Either way, I don't know, because it looked damn good.
It looked good. No, it really bothered me in Solaris. I mean, the only thing in 2001 with the video calls is that they date themselves, like with the 60s style, like the parents, when they wish him happy birthday to Frank, they look very much like a 60s couple. The fashion, like they didn't try at all. But but that's the only time in 2001 that you kind of sorry.
Never mind. I was about to make an offensive joke, so never mind.
And Solaris, like they're watching the TV, or like whenever there's like a video call, whatever it is, it's obviously shot on film. At least in 2001, they try to make the news show and stuff like that look like it was shot on video. It's obviously looks like everything, all the news footage and all that stuff is all like. And what's up with that scene? They're looking. I guess they took the statement of that guy, and it's shot like a movie. But I don't. Who shot that? Who and why is it on TV? He's got a copy of it. Yeah, his friend who was an astronaut who traveled there.
Yeah.
Oh no, he was alive. He was like, does he commit suicide later on? Yeah, because like he was older but they're watching a footage of him being younger when he does a deposition to authorities.
Yes. Sorry, that guy. Yeah.
And then, like the deposition, like who shot it? Why does it look like it's shot on film? They made it all bluish, like for the sepia, whatever, like the TV monitor thing. But it looks like it's shot like a movie, like 235 or whatever. And it just at least in 2001, they make it look like it's a. Anyways, it's all what goes back to what you're saying. It's lack of effort, like of. It just shows how Kubrick was a perfectionist and wanted to get these things right. But I did want to like touch on it before we maybe pivot to 2001 for a bit, especially because you wanted me to answer the slowness thing. Is so what I gather from Solaris, like what I can try to think of if there's some deeper meaning, is like why did the psychologist essentially, after he initially resisted the entity because he shipped her on a missile like out of
I
the
don't
station.
want to interrupt you, Gil, but I just have
Yeah.
to say, I think that scene is hilarious. It
No,
is
it's
almost
ridiculous.
right out of Looney Tunes. But okay, anyway, continue.
Yeah, no, it's preposterous. Like, are you're gonna waste a spaceship on something that's a hallucination? Like,
Well, I
that's
don't.
like
I
doesn't
think
make
he's
any.
trying to prove to himself that it wasn't one or something. I believed him. I just think it's hilarious that he did it.
No, it's ridiculous. And was that his ride home? I don't know, but in any
No,
case,
no, 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 no. I think it's like an
um,
escape pod or something.
yeah, it looks like it was the only one they had there. But in any case,
The other guy
um,
doesn't seem alarmed by it.
but what I gather from it is the other two scientists are more level-headed. They're looking at it as like, we're here to explore and that's what we're doing. But the psychologist, because he's connected to like human emotion and to understanding things, like what he's doing with this entity is he's doing a therapy session with it. The entity is trying to connect with him through a hallucination of his dead wife, and he's trying to connect with the entity through reigniting his um love for his wife, but knowing that it's not his wife, but that he can have some sort of semblance of like another life with her, and through that he can maybe understand the entity. And I think that's what the movie is going for, and I think that's all admirable and interesting, and there could have been such a better movie done about this. I feel like, and I'm assuming it's not the remake from 2002, but that concept of like connecting to an entity and speaking to it through, even though it's painful for him to see his wife again, it's painful, but it's also what he wants. That's why, that's the hallucination. So all that stuff I think is interesting. I just don't know, like, at bottom, like, so is the conclusion that he decided to stay there because the entity, even though it's not his wife, fills the hole in his heart, and maybe in this way maybe he can, I don't know, convey, like, if he becomes one with this entity and he stays on this planet, maybe he can pass along the the wisdom or whatever of, like, or whatever the discovery is to the rest of humanity, like sort of like a 2001 thing towards the end. Like some sort of next step of evolution is like that he becomes one with this entity. Is that really what's going on, or is there something that I'm missing?
I think you read it correctly, or at least the way I personally see it. Up until the last part that you said. Um, I don't know what you think, Matt, but for me personally, the first stuff that you talked about, Gil, is actually my favorite stuff in the whole movie. I think it's really fascinating that there's a story about, like I said, it reminded me a bit of the of that short film or short story, sorry, Nemesis, in the same sense of like that it's like they arrive on the planet and they're talking to the planet kind of, but and also similar things happen in that movie where the planet doesn't know how to talk to them. But I the way I see it is, you've got this station, you've got the guys on the station, and they're having troubles. I really wish they had like done a better job explaining this on the Earth side of it. But when he gets there, he there's probably some stuff with the Burton character that I'm not really fully remembering or grasping, but the significance of it anyway, other than just a warning, like a foreshadowing kind of thing. But basically, the way I see it is, when he arrives, he's surprised to see that everything's in complete disarray, and these guys are like not coming out of their rooms. You know, they're acting like, I don't know, they're just like they're completely like not really caring about their responsibilities of the station or anything. They're just like sitting there, and moreover, one of the cosmonauts have died, you know, um, and the other two are carrying on, but they're just like letting the place fall apart. And he's kind of like, what the heck's going on? And very quickly he starts realizing that um, that something's going on, and that there are things or people, things resembling people on the ship that are not part of the crew and are not supposed to be there. And then he finds the video from his friend and starts learning what's going on. And they kind of tell him a little bit, but he still doesn't believe them until he experiences it for himself, which of course makes sense because they told him, we knew you weren't going to believe us. We knew it was going to start happening to you. So we're just going to wait and let it happen so that you would understand, kind of thing. But in essence, the way I see it is the planet knows they're there and it wants to communicate with them. It wants to reach out and make contact with them. They've made contact, but they can't communicate with them. And the way I see it is that it's trying to almost strangely, almost in like an Arrival sort of way, it's trying to communicate with each of the three different people, four at first, but now that guy's dead. So now it's just the three of them. It's trying to communicate with each of the three characters. And the only way it knows how is to reach out, like poke around in their brain and almost in a contact sort of way, like the Jodie Foster movie, create an image in front of them that they can interact with from their memories. So that way it makes sense to them. It can communicate through that. And instead of an image, it's putting together a physical thing that they can actually touch. Like it's manifesting this thing in front of them. And the problem is that each one of these three guys have a very different personality and a very different outlook on life and a very different approach to problem solving. I can't quite put my finger on what the snot guy is like, what his whole take is supposed to be. He's the one I couldn't quite figure out, other than he was sort of defeatist in a sense. That's all I could really figure about him.
Oh, the one with the lab.
No, the other guy, Snot.
Oh, Snot was the one
first guy that he speaks to.
The one who had the birthday.
Yes, him, exactly. Yeah.
The library.
I think it becomes extremely obvious that the other character who starts with an S, I can't remember his name, but the kind of cold-hearted one.
Sartorius.
Yeah, Sartorius or whatever. He represents like pure scientist, kind of thing. This guy gets a creepy little manifestation of a little, midget person who we only see for half a second. And this guy like comes out of nowhere and it's just like, whoa, and he almost seems very embarrassed by it and whatever. But the impression that we get from him, from all his conversations in that one scene, is that this guy, just like all of them, are fully aware of the fact that these are not human beings in front of them. And so his reaction to it is, I'm just going to test this thing like it's any other part of science. He has no feelings for any of it. I can only imagine the disgusting, horrific stuff that he is subjecting these things to, because we learn shortly after that these things they just keep, anytime you kill one, they just pop right back up a couple hours later. And so like, I can only imagine that in that room of his, that lab of his, he is doing all kinds of creepy stuff to this thing to test it and probe it and figure out what on earth it is, because that's how his brain works. He sees it as just something to experiment on. The other guy, like I said, they don't spend much time on him and he's very vague. I can't tell what his bag is, but I guess he's kind of just sort of like, he seems very defeated about the whole thing and just kind of like jaded about it. I don't know if he really knows what he thinks. But then finally, the main character arrives and he's a psychologist. To me, in a big way, the movie that I think probably like, and I don't know, I haven't read the book, so I don't know how close it is to the book, but the movie that I think this reminded me the most of and probably took a lot from was the movie that took a lot from Solaris, I should say, is Sphere.
Sphere. I was gonna say Sphere several times in the last hour, but because the whole communicating with an entity.
Yeah, in Sphere, it's the same sort of situation where they're isolated away from everyone underwater instead of on another planet, but like they're on this little thing. And you've got a roster of characters, and some of them are dying off because they're sort of they're not really communicating with the sphere, but they're being, their brain, that's the whole thing about that movie, is they discover about what it actually is doing to them. But the point is that you've got three main characters that all suddenly start having these manifestations around them because of their own brains and how they're reacting to them differently. And it's the therapist, the person who specializes in the brain, who manages to make a true connection and understand and kind of provides that bridge for the audience of what's actually going on. I find it interesting that in this movie, it's the therapist guy, or the psychologist, I guess, whatever, who has the advantage of it, rather than just being like a child or a weird little thing that he's seen, or like Burton claims it was like a kid from his past, but who's now 12 feet tall or something weird like that. Instead, Chris is seen like a perfect representation of his wife at one point. So it's very easy for him to connect to it. But to me, it's the alien, on this entity on the planet, reaching out and trying its best to communicate with humans. And it just finally finds one in Chris that it can kind of gel with, because he doesn't keep killing the thing. He does it once, but and like you said, I don't think it's perfectly done. I think there's a lot of problems with it, but that's the aspect of the movie from about the 1 hour mark to about the 2 hour mark I find the most fascinating, when they're trying to like figure out what on earth is happening. And then of course the compounding aspect of like the entity itself, the girl, wondering, what am I, kind of thing. That's the part I was mostly compelled by.
Yeah. The entity, like, what am I? Yeah. Which I don't think it went deep enough, but
I
it's
agree.
funny about Sphere is that I guess that's what happens at the end of the movie, is like maybe she'll find out what she is if this guy joins her. That's, I think, the idea in the end, but I just don't know. It's too vague. The whole thing is very vague. But Sphere, I rated 7, so I did rate it.
I love Sphere.
Solaris.
It's
funny that, and it's funny that like they basically admit that like it was a take on the book. I mean, and the movie, of course, but it got like really bad reviews. Like it's like 3.5 Metascore. In any case, but I was gonna say about Solaris, and maybe that can cue Matt to answer this about Tarkovsky, and then definitely we should pivot to 2001. But
yeah.
But why does everything have to be so vague? Like, even though they talk nonstop, they can't fucking stop talking. But everything is so vague. Like, why wouldn't he explain to them what he's doing? I mean, I understand that maybe he shouldn't reveal his methods to the entity, or maybe he should. Like, why shouldn't he be open with it? Like, if he's like using his wife's manifestation as a way to connect to this creature, then why not just tell that to them? And I understand they're doing their own thing. I don't know what the guy at the birthday, the snout, I don't know what was his manifestation, because we don't see it. I guess they locked them in their rooms or something. That's
we see like a glimpse of it, and that's it.
Yeah, but it's like, why not just be upfront about it? Like, this could be such an interesting story if, like, you see the other manifestations and you see this creature trying to understand and living through different characters, and maybe it'll change characters. It's not going to be just a wife. It could be somebody else from that person's life, and it could be a way of him trying to understand humanity, trying to understand what he is, trying to understand what the concept of a life is, what is the concept of consciousness. There's so much that can be explored here. None of it was. Like, it's a 3-hour movie almost, and with very few intriguing questions raised, like, what is the meaning of consciousness? What is the meaning of like intelligence? What is love? What is emotion? Like, what is unique about humanity that like intrigues this creature? And there's none of that here. Like, there's an outline of an idea, but it's mostly is meandered over for 2 hours and 45 minutes, and we don't delve very deep into. They talk about the depth of human emotion. I just don't see it, and I don't know why I don't see it. And I think a lot of it is Tarkovsky style. Like he has this meditative way about making a movie super slow because he wants to slow it down to a crawl, so it puts the viewer into some sort of a trance. Like it's like a meditation, and then when you're in that trance, you experience things differently. You don't experience them as like a cold medium, which is and it pivots to what Kubrick did in 2001. But I don't know. But I want to let like Matt at least give his take on it. Like, because what I think the difference is between these two filmmakers is that Kubrick does it when it's necessary, and I'll explain why it's necessary in 2001. But Tarkovsky knows only to do that. He has no idea how to make a Clockwork Orange or a Full Metal Jacket. Like, all he does is these very slow meditative movies. So it's no surprise that this one is as well. At least 2001 was a departure for Kubrick as far as like, it's not what he does every time. He just thought it was appropriate for that specific story. And it's funny because people say Solaris is Tarkovsky's most pop movie that he made. What the fuck are you talking about? It's boring to tears, just like any one of his other movies. And it's meditative and it's philosophical and all that good stuff. And it's mostly visual, not as visual as some of his other stuff. But it's just another Tarkovsky movie. There's nothing unique about it, and it's not poppy at all. I mean, that's just me. With the exception of Andrei Rublev, that's the only movie of his that I really enjoyed. I don't know why that one worked for me, and the other ones are just boring to tears. But maybe that's for a different conversation. But I don't know. What's your takeaway from his movies as far as like your response to them or the slowness? Like it doesn't bother you, or you think it's more effective to some degree, or?
Well, I mean, yeah. First of all, it doesn't. Yeah, it's never bothered me, but I mean that's not an argument. That's just me saying it's never bothered me. I've just always had a strangely long, tolerance for I've just always had a really long attention span. So, I mean it's. I mean, he's just, yeah. I mean, his films definitely just resonate with me in that sense. I mean, like I'm just somebody who can, like Terrence Malick. He can sit there for 3 hours and just let his images wash over me. But I mean, I think that I think that Tarkovsky is somebody who is in terms of like dealing with larger issues and larger perspectives on a smaller scale. And I'm not going to, I mean, I see where you're coming from in terms of Solaris. I can understand your criticisms and all that stuff. I mean, I view Tarkovsky as one of the greatest poets that's ever graced cinema. That's basically what I'm going to say. That's it.
Yeah, because it's that slow meditative thing. It's almost like a certain style of poetry, I would say. Like that's like all about like slowing things down so you can digest them, I guess, better. That would be the idea. But yeah, I'll do a quick thing about 2001, then I'll let Jason go because he said he wanted to share some stuff about it. But so my answer is 2001, and then when you asked me that question earlier, I immediately thought of the answer. Like, I mean, it just kind of rolls from one thing to the next. But I think what's genius about the pacing in 2001, and I also didn't get it when I was 18 or whenever I first watched it. I thought it was very, very boring. But you kind of understand by the end of it, or not just by the end, but if you watch it when you're slightly more mature, everything moves slower. in space. I mean, not just that, but the entire journey of humanity is a very long process. Like, he starts at a time when life moved very slow, from the savannas of Africa or whatever, for the ape people, the dawn of man. And then you progress to the space age, and there's the spaceships, and spaceships in space move very, very slowly because they cover very, very long distances. It's like watching a plane fly over, and it's like crawling when it's really like flying at like, I don't know, it's like 900 kilometers per hour. The rotation of the Earth is super slow. And so everything in the universe on that time scale, and in space, gravity slows things down. It makes you walk slower. Like, all these elements are all together, whether it's time, space, all these elements are slow, which makes sense that the pacing of the whole story would be slow. And I do feel like that he was doing a Tarkovsky there to some degree, only he outdid Tarkovsky. It was very nonverbal, which is what meditation is. It tends to be not as verbal. There's a lot of quiet moments in meditation. So you can hear, you can hear the universe, you can breathe, you can hear your breath, you can hear the universe. Like, you're not occupying your mind with more dialogue and more thoughts and more words. You give yourself space in between words and instructions. And that's what 2001, it's a meditative movie. Like, he probably took that from someone like Tarkovsky, inspiration from him, but only mastered it. Like, he did it for the right movie at the right time, and it was tough to understand that was what he was trying to do, but it was a meditation about the idea of what humanity is. And even if it's fiction, we don't know if it's true or not, whether that's actually the case, that that there was a alien species or a god or some entity that incited our move from ape to intelligent beings that became the rulers of the earth, and then eventually will rejoin, like, through hints, essentially a treasure hunt that these entities leave for us. We reconnect with them, and then become a part of them, like become non-corporeal beings that can travel the universe and explore it, in perpetuity, which is what the astronaut basically becomes. In the end, he becomes like a baby in space, which is like a sun-like creature that's not really not immortal anymore. So it's like the next step in evolution. That's a possibility for an intelligent life in the universe, is like the next step of evolution. And that's all done in this very long, episodic for the right reasons too. Like, he changed the form. It's not beginning, middle, and end. It's episodic. There's no main character. It's all about these moments in time and the progression of humanity from its inception, from its beginning until the next step of evolution. And it's all these, and not only that, but it also the element of the AI too, is like that was supposed to be the next step. That's what we thought maybe is the next step. We still think it might be the next step of like intelligent life, is that AI is going to take over after humanity is dead. It might outlive humanity. But the movie, the story, envisions something more beautiful than just artificial intelligence taking over. Is that maybe we can be something more than just mere mortals, and AI actually fucks up and makes mistakes and is very childish and can be evil under the wrong circumstances. So it's all this exploration of all what humanity can be and all the tools that humanity have. And it showcases the tools, the beauty of the tools, the spaceships that we built. They're flying to beautiful classical music. And it's all just like this one big globe that encompasses all that humanity is, was, and could be in a fiction way that's just you can't put it into words. So he put it into a movie. That's why I think it's the greatest movie ever made. It took me several viewings to understand that, but it's literally from top to bottom the perfect movie somebody can think of. It's the quintessential science fiction movie. Like there is no better story to be told in a science fiction movie. It will never happen again. Nobody will ever top this movie. This movie will never be topped. Or you can say Star Wars is a more entertaining movie, but Kubrick fucked everybody. He's made the quintessential science fiction story, and you can never top it. You just can't top it. It's just ingenious. And I think it's all just orchestrated, and the slowness makes sense because of the story. He wasn't doing a movie about like Clockwork Orange with a maniacal like teenager where he went all fast motion, slow motion, like crazy music. He was doing a movie that's a meditation about the concept of what it means to be an intelligent species in the universe.
It's a very good pitch.
Don't disagree with a single word that you said.
I do, but I really like what you said.
I mean, yeah. Bottom line, yeah. 2001 is among the greatest movies ever made. It is regularly what I name as my favorite science fiction movie ever made. It is it always falls into my top 5 films of all time if people ask me what are my top 5 films of all time. I mean, it's up there with like Come and See, City of God, like, and I usually have a few things that interchange, but yeah, it's always up there. Probably the greatest sci-fi movie ever made. It is the greatest sci-fi movie ever made. I rewatch Minority Report more often just because it's more fun. I mean, it's a mature movie. It's not for everybody. I mean, I can definitely understand how a lot of people could see 2001 like several times and still just come out of it and say, what the fuck are you even showing me? But that's kind of the point. And I think that's also kind of the point of Solaris. Both of these movies, you're supposed to come out of them with a lot of questions.
But are there questions? Because I really think
yes, there are questions.
And you can ask them for sure. But I really think 2001 at bottom, and maybe that could be a criticism. It leaves a lot of like we don't know where the story is going. But as far as what happens, like I said this a while back. It was like to me, once you kind of get what happens in that movie, it's kindergarten storytelling. You can put it in a kid's book. Like seriously, it's too simple of a story, but that's the beauty of it. Like, how did he take that simple of a story and make it completely incomprehensible and confusing? And it's maybe because I watched it 10, 15 times that it's just so obvious, and it's almost embarrassing that I didn't realize it the first 2 or 3 viewings. Like Woody Allen said, like famously said, like he said, like that's the first time. And he didn't see it before he was 25. He saw it like in his 40s, I think. And he said, like, I thought it was a piece of crap, but then I went back and saw it again because people said it was good. And I was like, and then I realized, like, by the 3rd, 4th viewing, is that the filmmaker was so ahead of me in so many levels that I had to, like, just stop thinking and just absorb. And that's when you really get it. And it's so simple. But ask me a question about it and see if I can't answer it. It's such a simple story.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it was. I'm not saying that 2001 was complicated. I'm saying, and I'm not saying that the plot was like, mind bending. I mean, it's not like a Christopher Nolan thing where he's, like fucking with your head or anything like that. I'm saying that both films rose to a point where, both of them came to a point where it's just like you come out of the theater, and if you went to go see the movie with another person, you're going to have some kind of a philosophical conversation. I'm not talking about the plot being complicated. I'm not talking about like necessarily the story being complicated. I'm talking about the message being complicated.
The message of 2001?
In both films.
Both
so
films.
Here's the thing, Gil. I'll just say it like this. You can go online right now and find like 10 to 15 YouTube videos and probably at least 25 forums where people are discussing 2001, and you'll find definite variations, if not completely different ideas of what the movie's trying to say. I think the movie's kind of clear in what it's poking at and saying and stuff like that. But because I mean, especially you did lay it out pretty well as well. But I'm what I mean when I bring all that up is to say that clearly this movie is vague enough that that there are questions, because you can just see that it's self-evident. There's so many people who like have questions about this movie that they don't get, or if they do get it, they get something different than somebody else. And I'm not even saying that that's necessarily a bad thing, but it's pretty clear that it's not cut and dry. I see it as a criticism myself, because I think it's really good for movies that I think, especially science fiction more than anything, but I think it's really good that a movie makes you think. I think it's a good thing. I think this movie makes you think about the stuff like birth, about technology, about how technology. I love that it kind of makes the point that like maybe it's technology itself that's pushing our evolution rather than our evolution pushing technology. I think that's pretty fascinating. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, like it has a lot of stuff to say, sort of, in sense of asking really great questions and stuff. But I don't know. I think that even though it has fascinating ideas and really, really beautiful set design and an excellent use of music and stuff like that, I kind of think that when it comes to like the economy of storytelling, that it kind of fails in that sense, because like I think it's really, really more permissible to be vague if you're making like a short film, because in a short film, all you have time for is to go look at this interesting aspect of this thing about life. Isn't that interesting? Maybe I'll say something about it. But really, the whole point is to make you think about it. This movie isn't a short film. Like if you and I agree with you, by the way, that it's really good use of visual storytelling. I just don't think it's economic use of storytelling, of visual storytelling, or any kind of storytelling for that matter. Like if this movie had been the ape sequence that was like 5 minutes, and all the stuff with Floyd that was about 10 minutes, and then the stuff with Dave and Hal about 10 minutes, and then all the stuff in the bedroom at the end about 3 to 5 minutes. Like this could be like a 30-minute short film, and it would be, I don't think the ideas would be any less by that. Now, I know from what you said that
maybe an hour and a half, but yeah.
Well, hold on a minute. I'm getting to that. I'm getting to that. Now, I know that you said that that there's that you see a lot in his use of pacing and so on and so forth. So if we took those 30 minutes and then we fluffed it into an hour and a half, I can still see that being a really good hour and a half science fiction movie, especially if it's as good as this movie is in all those things that I just said.
No,
but to me, if you're going to have a movie that's like 2.5 hours long, which this movie is,
which is, by the way, economical by some metrics, because like Lawrence of Arabia was like 4 hours. So you know, there's longer movies.
Started on Lawrence of Arabia.
I mean, Barbie was over 2 hours, and I mean,
don't get me started on that.
Every other movie now is 2.5 hours. But keep going, but finish your point.
But this movie, I agree with you that there's a simplicity and a beauty to the simplicity of this story. And I agree that it has fascinating ideas, and it is a movie that makes you think. But if you're going to take this movie that I believe could be told in 30 minutes, and I believe could be fluffed into a fantastic 90-minute feature, and all you're going to do is ask questions and make us ask questions, then that's not good enough. That's not an economic use of storytelling. This is like a 2.5 hour movie. If you're going to explore what it's exploring, I should get some answers. Yeah, your answers don't have to be right, but it should say more. I mean, you said that the film is a meditation on what man is. So what's the answer? It's got 2.5 hours to meditate on that. It doesn't give us an answer. It just meditates on it and goes, isn't this cool? What do you think about it? It 2.5 hours.
Well, it gives
something that could be 30 minutes.
Option. It gives an example of what humanity could be. Yes, that does give an answer, but it's a hypothetical answer because we don't know the answers. It's a
if
movie.
It has 2.5 hours to explore this thing. It should have some pretty good answers to these to these questions.
But I think it does. To me, I think it does, and you know, and it actually is, and it's no surprise because everything is planned with Kubrick. It's no surprise that the AI character, which is probably the star of the movie, like the Hal character, the significance of it is that, you know, we started with the bones, smashing skulls with bones or killing animals with bones. That was the first tool, and the last tool that we use is AI, which is like we started using our brain to invent tools that eventually we invented an artificial brain that can replace our brain. And we became gods. For the first time, we created something. That's why the scene, the murder scene in the end, like near the end, when he's taking the memory chips like out of Hal, and he's saying like, I'm afraid. That's like one of the greatest scenes in movie history. Like you have
scene. We didn't need to see 20 plus chips being pulled out in fucking real time.
No, but come on, but it is so effective. Yeah, it's so effective. It's chilling.
Don't get me wrong, it is chilling. I love what he's saying. I love the interaction between the two of them. Could have been a third of the time.
And I'm telling you, that's what I'm telling you. He outdid Tarkovsky. What Tarkovsky has tried to perfect his entire career, Kubrick said, I like that. I'm going to fucking nail that in one movie. And he did it. Yeah. He outdid Tarkovsky. Like he took the idea of a movie experience as a meditative experience. And he said, I'm going to do, like, what do you do when you meditate? You meditate about your place in the universe. It's supposed to be a secular, non-religious way of connecting with the idea of what am I? I am sitting in this body, and I have consciousness, and I know that there's a world around me, and I assume that above that world there's stars and there's universes and there's suns, but I don't know the meaning of any of it. So all I'm doing is like in the slow mind process of sitting with those thoughts, I take a break from the gruesome reality of existing, which is like find the next meal, find the next paycheck, you know, like basically make your way to death. And Kubrick says like that idea of a meditation on what it means to be a human being, that means that an intelligent being in the universe, and obviously he'll make one about humans because it's a movie for humans. He wanted it to be like a meditation, and if he's gonna do a 30-minute meditation, it's not gonna be as effective as an hour and a half, and an hour and a half is not gonna be as effective as 2.5 hours. Could it be 4 or 5 hours? It probably at that point would stop being effective. That would have, if 2.5 hours like bored you, then believe me, 4 hours would have been worse. But I do think that a 90-minute efficient movie wouldn't have had the same effect. It would just not have the same meditative state-like effect that this did. I really think you could cut this movie shorter and it will be a decent movie, but it wouldn't be one of the greatest movies ever made because everything was planned towards this. Like what he does with the music, and I've tried to say this badly in this podcast before, but the fact that he uses classical music and a waltz on spaceship flying in space, it's not the fact that it's not just that it makes it more interesting because it's more enjoyable. If it's going to be like silent, it would be more boring. It's not just for entertainment. It's also to take the whole concept of like the entire beauty of humanity. Look at us. Look, we've created spaceships that fly in space. We create beautiful music. We create beautiful art. We're such a complex like beings, and it's so beautiful. There's so much beauty to humanity, but there's also flaws to it. There's also like which funny enough manifests where it manifests in early humans when they kill each other, like the whole tribal thing, but then it manifests in the child that we created. The AI becomes self-aware and wants to defend itself by killing the humans that he was supposed to be helping. That's like the beauty, the circular logic of the story of like how it all comes together, like the beautiful aspects of humanity and the negative aspects, and to find that balance. And the movie essentially takes you like all the way to like where he meets the entities and he realizes that time is meaningless. Because time is endless. Like, we think of time as like, 100, 200,000 years ago, like a million years ago when the first humans started like, using tools. Like, we're talking billions of years that these creatures probably existed, and they've seen probably countless of intelligent life being born on different planets all over the universe. And we're petty about our stupid little things, but they're like trying to say like we think you're ready. We send you the messages. Now you've come to Neptune to meet with us, and we're gonna allow one of you to take the next step. And that's just one step. Who knows how much bigger the universe is and how much there is more to become or to explore. But the first step is let go of the corporeal mortal body thing. Like, try this on for size, see if you can handle this. And they make him into a spirit being, like someone that can travel in the speed of light, or I don't know what's his ability. Those are the questions. Like, that's the answer they don't give. All we know is that these creatures who planted the monolith many, many years ago wanted to take humanity to the next step. And once they are ready, once they build an AI, once they are like had space travel, they say, okay, now they're ready to meet us, and maybe they'll finally be ready to take on the responsibility of being star beings, to being spirit beings instead of mortal beings, physical beings. And yes, what happens next? I just started reading the 3001 book, which is like I think the fourth or the third book in the series. I think it's the last one. So I just thought I would like to kind of close the whole story. But that's what's happening. We don't know what happens after that, but we just know that, like, wouldn't it be nice if there was a way for humanity to like take some next step evolutionary, which wouldn't involve just putting all our faith into the machines, but actually just become something more than just a body that lives for 70 to 90 years and just disappears. Like, that's one way of looking at it. Like, there's other ways for it to go. Maybe our being can be joined with a machine, and maybe we can live forever through machinery. I don't know, but this is what the story he was telling is he thought it was a more spiritual story. Is that it's almost like reconnecting with God, because that's why I always felt like 2001. If you're religious, then he met God, and if you're not religious, he met aliens. But because God is a supposed to be out of time, immortal being, and you're supposed to, they say if you go to heaven or something, is you're supposed to join God in the afterlife, in the spirit world. And that's what the movie kind of does. That's why I think it's such a beautiful movie, because you could actually look at it from a religious perspective and it still works. Because if you're religious, he joined God. And if you're like not religious, then it's just some sort of beings that are like taking us to the next step of evolution. It's a perfect story. And I think it gives all the answers except for what happens next. But that's the movie that we're saying to telling, and after that, like, read the books if you want to know what happens next. But I think it's pretty self-explanatory, what happens.
Actually, Gil, like you put my brain into a weird spot where I'm thinking about cranking my rating for 2001 up to 11.
No, but I mean, I to me it seemed always very clear. Like, I mean, not in the first few viewings. But
I'm not even talking about the grander vision of the movie. I'm talking about that scene that kind of spurred on the whole discussion where Dave is removing the chips slowly, destroying Hal, and my mind is going, and so on and so forth. And I mean, you referred to it as the murder scene, which I mean,
it's like, come on, it's red. The whole room is red. It's
right.
I mean, the use of color in 2001 is fucking brilliant. I mean,
no arguments here. But I mean, there is so much in that scene of like, so many murders in real life happen in a split second. It's just like, snap of the finger, somebody's dead. Like, and it is literally the fact that scene takes so long, and Dave knows what he's doing. We have a certain understanding that Hell 9000 is, probably a sentient creature at this point. And, he is, I mean, that, the longevity of that scene is, fundamentally the mens rea. Like Dave knows that there is a conscious creature that he is destroying, that he is killing, and he is doing it slowly and deliberately.
Well, he's doing it as fast as he can.
And he's also being merciful, because when he tells him, like, would you like me to sing the song? He tells him, yes, please, I want to hear the song, because he wants to. Yeah, because he's almost like sticking the knife in him, and he's saying, like, I love you, or like, I see you as another entity in the universe.
Yeah, right. I mean, he's not being psychopathic. He's not trying to torture.
He's not being
he's doing it as quickly as possible, but he's trying to make him feel good. And when Hal says, like, I'm afraid, that's one of the greatest lines in all of like movie history. I mean, like, when a computer says, I'm afraid, and he says it a few times, he repeats it. That's just, I don't know. To me, that's just brilliant storytelling.
Well, I hope it's clear that from what I've said, and from the fact that I'm complaining about these aspects of the movie, but I did, like I said, I gave it an 8. If these things made this movie unwatchable, to me, I would give it like a 2 or a 3. I think this movie has so much going for it. I think it is all the things I've said positive about it. It is a beautiful movie. It's so well done. The music is so good, so on and so forth. But and I don't even disagree with most of the points that you're making, Gil. I just think that I mean, you kind of said all those things about the movie being a meditation, and it's a meditation about this and about that and all the stuff that you said, and I agree with all those things. But at the end of meditation, even though it doesn't always happen, our goal should be enlightenment. It should be to understand something. And at the end of the day, like I said, I don't really feel like this movie comes to any sort of real conclusion. And that's okay if it had been a 30-minute short film. It would still kind of be okay if it had been fluffed into a 90-minute film. And I do agree with you that there are aspects of the slower storytelling that probably work in the thematic ways that you're talking about and are benefited, and that the movie is benefited from those things. Like I said, 30 minutes to 90 minutes is a 3-fold increase. And I still think still would work. And it still works as it is. I just think it's flawed, because when people talk about, a filmmaker that they respect and a movie that they like, and it has, the nice way would say unconventional pacing, and other people would just say slow pacing. The words that they use are like meditative pace, meticulously paced, methodical pace. At the end of the day, this is a self-indulgent pace. And I mean,
no, I think it's serving a story. Again, if it was Tarkovsky,
I think it's not. I think if it was 90 minutes,
I agree with you 100%. Just direct your arrow at the other movie we're discussing, because to me, Tarkovsky is extremely self-indulgent.
I think all everything movies, that you said,
Kubrick gives the movie what it needs. If it's Clockwork Orange, I think that, it's fever space. If it's 2001, it's slow because it's a different movie.
Gil, I'm not disagreeing about Kubrick's skill, and I completely agree with you that this is his only movie that has this pace. I love all his other movies.
Barry Lyndon is kind of slow too,
but it needs to be. It's kind of like an epic story about the man's life. But what I'm getting at is that I think, like you said, what the story needs. I think the story could be told in 30 minutes. I think it'd be better if it was told in 90 minutes. And everything that you said about Tarkovsky, I 100% agree. And I think it's hilarious that you're saying it, because I feel exactly the same way about 2001. I just think it's
I think that Tarkovsky does the same thing for every single one of his movies. Well, yeah, Kubrick does it when it needs.
I've never seen any of his other movies, so
what do we always say about Spielberg? We said versus Scorsese. Spielberg always shoots the movie exactly the way he needs. He doesn't like not a second more, not a second less for his Warner and whatnot. He serves the story. That's what Kubrick also did. It's like if he needs slow pacing, he goes for slow pacing. If he needs fast pacing, he does fast pacing. I mean, he does like to stretch things a bit. Like even Full Metal Jacket had moments that were very stretched. Yeah. But 2001, it was a very intentional thing that he said. I'm pulling a Tarkovsky,
I don't think for a
and I'm
second any of it was unintentional or accidental or anything like that. I just think that it went from what should have been about a 90-minute thing that would have been suiting the story, and I think it's 2.5 hours. And at that point, I think it's self-indulgent.
And I'm not denying, by the way, I'm not denying that a 90-minute version of it would have pleased you and many other people, but I think that the movie wouldn't have the reputation that it has. I think it would be a lesser movie for the broader like community, let's say like film buffs, film critics, and by the way, Solaris has a higher rating with critics than 2001 does, but I think that's just bullshit. That's because everybody like. Yeah, everybody like because it's the only proper things. Like, Tarkovsky's a genius, but I'm telling you, Kubrick outdid him, and he did it for the right movie. Where Tarkovsky never had a fast-paced movie, he always does the slow things, and it doesn't suit every single story. I'm very sorry to tell that guy. But it's fine. It worked for some of them. I liked Andrei Rublev, and I think maybe I'll like some of the other ones, but it didn't work on every one of his movies. But as far as like, yeah, I mean, you can't please everybody, obviously. I just think that it was completely intentional and it works perfectly. And even that's what I was going to say too, is that I admit that me myself, when I first watched it once or twice, I thought it was just boring. And by the way, the biggest irony is that if I'm not mistaken, Bergman and Tarkovsky thought 2001 was boring. I mean, Bergman also said that Citizen Kane was boring, so fuck that guy. I really respect his movies, and I think he's one of the greatest filmmakers ever. But it's very hypocritical. The fact that like these two people make super slow movies and then they complain when somebody fucking does it better than them. You know, like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's just like, I think it was jealousy. It's like, fuck that. I don't know how that fucking guy did it. I'm so pissed. So I'm going to like just like, badmouth this fucker. Yeah. No, they were upset that an American director pulled off ostensibly what would be like only be accomplished by a master foreign filmmaker. But he pulled it off.
Yeah.
It really pissed them off, I think. They were just so jealous. That's what I think happened there. I have no idea. But the fact that Bergman and Tarkovsky thought 2001 was boring, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, seriously.
It does seem
hypocritical. For you, that's fucking Star Wars 2001 compared to your movies.
To be fair to Jason, for one point, like if I can just insert myself as the middle ground, I mean, Gil, I agree with you. I'm just saying that some of your arguments led me to think that, you know, like it should be pointed out that a decision can be deliberate and wrong at the same time.
Yeah, I'm not denying that. I just think that he didn't make a mistake on 2000.
I don't think that Kubrick was wrong. Like,
yeah.
I'm just saying
don't think he made the wrong decision. I just think he just held him a little long. That's all.
Yeah, he made a decision that didn't fly with Jason or maybe some other people.
Right.
It flies with a lot of people, other people. So yeah, like I said, you can't please everybody.
And you know what, Gil? Maybe when I see it 3 or 4 more times, I'll agree. I don't know.
Yeah,
which, by the way, it's possible I'll see Solaris a 3rd or 4th time and I'll appreciate it more, because it is a very slow-paced like movie that's tough to really get to. But I think I kind of covered all the points, so I don't think I missed anything. I just think that maybe there's something deeper that I missed, but I just felt like they're bullshitting for so much of the movie that I checked out. I think that's probably what happens in most Tarkovsky movies.
And
but I guess we'll see once we see Stalker. We'll see what Jason thinks.
Well,
I do look forward to seeing it.
I mean, I will say that I said that I would give every Tarkovsky movie a 9.5 to a 10, and I gave Solaris a 9.5. So
yeah, that is a very, very high rating for that movie. And you know, and I am pleasantly surprised, and now I'm looking forward to Stalker, because I was really concerned when Jason said he fell asleep when he was trying to watch Solaris yesterday. I was like, oh boy, you know, like Jason's gonna like hate this movie. So I'm glad
I've seen it before. I didn't hate it. It's just slow. Like 45 minutes before he gets to the space station. What are we doing?
Yeah. If you want to talk about like an impenetrable Kubrick movie, I feel like The Shining, I mean, to some degree is like, it takes 45 minutes till they're alone in the hotel. Also it's a much more, and that's the last thing I would say, like, or question for you, Jason, is that to me, The Shining is way more vague than 2001. Like, what was the answer you were looking for? Like, I explained it several ways now. Like we started as apes, and we ended up being spirit beings. Like, we started here and we ended here. That's the story. What else was like? What was vague about that? What would have made it better? If you had written the end of it, what would you? Would you wanted like a voiceover explaining what happened?
No, nothing like that. I'm just trying to say that, like, you're saying it's a meditation on what man is, and I don't really think that it gives much of a answer to what that question, to that, I think it asks wonderful questions, and I think it makes you think, and I think it's wonderful for doing both of those things. And I don't think it's even bad that it doesn't necessarily give an answer. I just think that if you're, if you're going to make a movie like that, somewhere between half an hour and 90 minutes is about right. You're going to give me 2.5 hour meditation. I better have an epiphany at the end.
That is true, but that's the thing. I do think that what he does in 2001, that's why it's crazy. But like, he doesn't really. It's not a movie or a story in the traditional sense. That's why the whole episodic thing is that there's no catharsis.
Don't you think that like when there's a movie like that takes a very unconventional path, that there's always a risk of it being gimmicky? And some movies have been phenomenal for being gimmicky, and other movies have failed for being gimmicky. And I don't know. I think it's a great movie. I'm just saying, I don't know. To me, just could have worked just as well, if not better, and been a lot shorter and less vague.
No, I think what he accomplished there is that he wanted to get off the idea of like telling a story, of at least telling a story in the sense of like catharsis, like of like a beginning, middle, and like resolution. There is a resolution. The resolution is that
he becomes a star child.
Some being like plants the seed of intelligence, and then what comes of that intelligence? We become civilized. We start wearing clothes. Like we create spaceships and AIs, and then eventually we meet the people or the entities that are responsible for that. And then they take us to the next step of evolution. It's a very simple story, but it doesn't have a catharsis for any character, which is very not traditional for.
Yeah, it's very Russian, like you said.
Yeah, but that's why, because it's the catharsis is for humanity, like, and the use of music, the beautiful music, like dun 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 dun.
Is it for humanity? I mean, only one guy survived.
No, but who's experiencing the movie? Humanity. The audience is the lead character. Like us watching it, it's a meditation for us. And
yes.
when the music rises, when there's like the encore basically from the beginning, is that you see the beauty of the alignment of the planets and then the baby comes and all that. All those things is like, it's all examples of beauty, and beauty is something that's very important to life because it gives life meaning. It makes life worth living. That's why the use of music, the use of the alignment of the planets, which is symmetry, which we like symmetry. Humans like that. It's appealing to us because we're symmetrical creatures. Like all these things are like very like intertwined, and yes, without the music. And without the symmetry and without the beauty of the shot, that's the catharsis, is that like, oh my God, that is a beautiful vision of what life could be. We just don't know. And that's the beauty of like, we don't know is the beauty of it. That's the whole asking questions that we don't have answers for. But isn't this a beautiful vision of, if only that was the case, that would be amazing. If humans could become spirit, like creatures that can roam the universe, like it'll be amazing. But most likely, it's not going to happen in our lifetime, so we'll die before then. But it's just it's essentially just a vision. It's a poem. If you want to talk about Tarkovsky being the poet of cinema, like 2001 is literally a poem. And what are poems? Sometimes poems don't have a catharsis. Sometimes they don't have a point. They just create an atmosphere, a mood. Like, how does the movie start and how does it come back from the intermission? Black screen for like 7 minutes. I think I timed it or something. It was close to 10 minutes of blackness with humming music of like getting you in the mood, like the whole mood of like a spiritual like. And it can come off, and it was such a big gamble because it could come off as such a pretentious piece of shit, but it's really trying to like, it's essentially a 2.5 hour poem. I
get that, and I agree with that, and I like movies like that. I just think that
there's very few of them. Tell me of another one. There's very few of them.
Well, hold on. When I said like that, I meant to say a movie that's kind of like not taking a traditional
Yeah,
way of
storytelling.
doing it. I meant it in a broad
I guess like Tree of
sense,
Life
not-
might be
I was
similar.
thinking that I was trying to think of some before this podcast, and I couldn't think of very many that where like the whole movie in itself is also a meta type, exploration of something else kind of thing. I'm sure if we all put our heads together, we could come up with a list of like 10 of them or something. All I could think of was like, There Will Be Blood is obviously very allegorical, and in a sense, it kind of feels like the whole movie is like a exercise in trying to get the audience to think about stuff, but also
meditation on capitalism.
capitalism, exactly. Yeah. I also think that
Excess.
movie's a little too long too. But what was the one you just said right now?
Tree of Life.
Oh, Tree of Life. Yeah, thank you. That one probably is a good example too. Although I don't know if that one really works all that well, to be perfectly honest. I mean, that's just my opinion. But I the only one I could think of, and I really feel like we could come up with way better examples. I feel kind of stupid even bringing this up because it's like I can't think of better examples. But like, when you were describing what kind of a movie it was and how it's very unconventional, I kind of thought about Inside Llewyn Davis. It's not a science fiction movie in any case, but by the time you're done with the story, the entire thing is like a meditation on what life would have been like for a musician of that time and that kind of thing. And the way the beginning and the ending is, it all works to try and tell that story. And in that sense, that you could a person could criticize it as being gimmicky. I think it works, but just to hammer home my point, it's like an hour 45, so like it's a much tighter movie. But anyway, I don't know. That's all I was going to say.
But yeah, no, it's interesting. I definitely, but I think that's why it was appropriate to compare these two, because I do think the Tarkovsky, like he just pulled a Tarkovsky with 2001. But
we should a couple shout outs. I was going to say,
if we're going to bring up a Coen Brothers movie, aren't we going to bring up No Country for Old Men?
That does feel appropriate.
I mean,
No Country for Old Men like reminds me a little bit of like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. To some degree, it's like the kind of movie where like it's a very like very there's like a very thin story there. Like everybody's chasing like a thing of money, and it's all about just like these different archetypes of characters.
What were you saying, Matt?
Though I will say that No Country for Old Men did kind of sum up the entire point of the movie in a monologue at the end, which would be contradictory
scenes in the movie.
Also a Serious Man, I feel like, is a very there's these movies that are almost like I mean, to some degree, The Usual Suspects, I feel like, too. Like, there's these movies that are like, did this actually even happen? Like, the whole meaninglessness of, like, watching a movie. Like, for, like, Usual Suspects, like, if he made up all the names and, like, was his whole story just something he made up? And there's only some kind of like the Bible. There's like the names and stuff, like not the names, but maybe those other criminals existed, but everything was fabricated. So we just sat down and watched an hour and a half movie that was a complete fabrication by a criminal mastermind, but didn't actually happen. Mm-hmm. Like that idea of like the meaningless of I guess Matrix would be the best example of like a pop movie that did this whole idea, like, what if we don't even exist? What if this like is like that kind of an idea, meditation on like existence. There's a few of them. I guess like Matt's one of his favorite movies. Whatchamacallit? Dark City.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Though I mean that movie did have a catharsis, and that movie did have a lot of answers at the end, but I mean, still
you just
a
have
lot
to
of
give it
high concepts, and
you just have to give it to Kubrick. Like, he had some balls to like make a movie with no catharsis, no lead character, like that much special effects and make it 2.5 hours because of the meditative concept, and it's just like, you know what, I'm just gonna stick to my guns and time will prove me right. It's like the audacity of doing that. I mean, yeah.
Well, like I said, I mean, the only difference that we may have on 2001 is it seems like you rank it as your number one. I might rank it as my number three, but that's still pretty high praise.
Oh yeah,
So,
no,
um,
I definitely
Back.
like I said, yeah. So if you want to give final thoughts, Jason, I think we're both good. You
Yeah,
had some shout outs.
No, I didn't have much else to say. I was going to mention that I think that since we are talking about 2001: Space Odyssey, there is a very old, hilarious robot chicken gag sketch, whatever, about talking about how 2001: A Space Odyssey is a classic and it's a visual masterpiece and it's all these things, and it's very, very it talks about it in a very nice way, but then it just says, but it's incredibly boring. And and it says, how could we make it better? And if you were watching on television, obviously it was all edited and pixelated, but if you have the DVD, it just is like, well, you know what, we'll just have all these space scenes that are so slow, and we're just gonna insert Playboy Playmate so and so, and they put this girl, this topless girl in, and she's floating through space the whole time, going like, "Wow, oh my gosh, look, I'm upside down," and all this like stupid stuff.
yeah.
But no, I was just gonna mention that I think it's, as I was watching, I just thought, I mean, this is all stuff that everyone has talked about at length, but over the years, but I just started making a list because I was like noticing all these other space movies that have clearly taken ideas, visuals, and all sorts of stuff from it. And I just, at one point, I started thinking about so many of them that I was like, I just started to write these down. But clearly, like, so much influence from this movie in like Event Horizon, Sunshine, a little bit in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Alien, Interstellar, Ad Astra, and certainly not just visuals, but also just like the so much of the story of Prometheus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what convinced me to watch Prometheus. Is they pulled like a 2001 there. So
Yeah,
Prometheus was a very ambitious movie, and while I really respect it for so much in there, especially Fassbender's performance, I think the movie kind of falls apart.
Well, I mean, Prometheus does stand alone, creating a new method of running away from things. Like, oh, there's this massive thing that's falling on us that's like a mile long. Let's just run vertically. Right instead of
everyone talks about that scene. I've never really thought that was. I thought there was a dozen other things that messed up that movie more than that scene. But I do understand why people were upset about it.
No. There are a dozen other things that messed up that movie. I mean, first of all, It should never have been shot digitally. Second of all, the aliens look like they're like the Michelin Man or something. Like they're just like. Pumped up, gobs of air or something. I mean,
you're not talking about the creature. You're talking about the architects or whatever the heck they call them.
Yeah, the architects. Yeah, They basically look like a Nazi caricature of a pumped up Jew.
What?
Only whiter.
They are very pale.
Yeah, I mean, You can.
I'll
edit
have to
that
watch
out
it
and-
again. I don't know. I don't even know where you're going with that, but okay.
Yeah.
The one thing I'll say, like,
It's just
yeah,
dumb character design.
I had this thought and I didn't bring it up during the episode, but yeah, I was kind of thinking about Solaris, and you can even make the argument for 2001, but you know, it reminded me of like Paul Thomas Anderson. I think he went to film school for like a few weeks or something, and he submitted like a paper to like a class, and he just basically copied and pasted something from like a very famous
From
film
David
theorist.
Mamet.
Yeah, something,
Yeah,
and then he got like a C or something. And you know what? I bet you if some like film student somewhere like somehow like, you know, took a Tarkovsky script and made it like just translated to English and stuff, like he would be like there is no chance anybody would take him seriously. Like Tarkovsky's like scripts or movies are there's no way anybody would think of them anything close to a movie. But he pulled it off. He had a career. He made it work. He was a foreign filmmaker. He established himself. He, you know, and you know, after we say about like 2001 and like The Fountain, like how Aronofsky like tried to pull a 2001, he did it a bit too early. Maybe didn't have enough wisdom. It seems like for the way his career is going, he basically was never going to succeed at like making that movie perfectly. But yeah, it's just this thing of like cinema is like inexplicable, you know, like something that everybody will say is a piece of shit on paper all of a sudden will become like all the critics will laud it as like one of the greatest movies ever, like Solaris. I mean, you know, I mean, come on, like even Tarkovsky didn't like thought it's one of his lesser movies, but it's got like a 90% like ranking from the critics. It's just there's a lot of bullshit when it comes to like, you know, film criticism, especially with like beloved filmmakers. So, you know,
I did have this. I did have this thought earlier, and I know it's getting late, so I'll try to be terse. But like, you know, in terms of like a movie that you watch and then you come out the other side and like it's okay. Not so much that you don't understand it. I mean, I'm sure that Jason understood it. I'm sure that you understood it, but it was really funny when I came out of the film Mother. I thought about this earlier. I went to see that with my mother, which I would not recommend.
Ridiculous.
Not a good idea.
And that was slightly more successful than The Fountain, but yes, I wouldn't see it with my mother.
Right. Well, I mean, it was less awkward than seeing The Monsters Ball with my mother, which I also did.
God.
See.
On that note, I still haven't seen that movie.
It just has a lot of graphic sex.
A lot of graphic stuff, nudity.
Yeah,
not just nudity,
it's
sex.
It's overrated.
Oh, sex? No.
Yeah,